Hello, everyone. I'm Reverend Nick Bullitt, the engagement catalyst here at One Spirit, and we are sitting here today with Sarah Bowen. We are here to discuss one of her upcoming workshops that's happening in October. And Sarah, welcome. We're so glad to see you.
Thank you, Nick. Good to see you today.
Thank you. So, if you could start out, just share a little bit about your work, your professional and spiritual work that led you to become an animal chaplain.
Sure. I like to say that it started being a preacher's kid who was trying to figure out how animals fit into everything my dad was talking about. And, I was that little kid who brought home the poor little dead chipmunk on the side of the road that I found after school to give it a little burial, little service for it. I started doing it at a very, very young age. And as our family cats passed away, how do we deal with these things? And so animals have been linked to my spirituality and my religious tradition since day one, I think.
Mm.
And then as I got older, I started to look more from kind of an advocacy standpoint, from a planetary ethics standpoint, like, how does the more than human world, what's that all about and what's my responsibility to it? And that's what led me to become an animal chaplain.
What is an animal chaplain?
Well, I'm glad you asked. People always wonder if I have a church for cats. And I hope someday I do, but I don't yet. There are really four pieces to it. The first is supporting animals. There are 8 million dogs and cats which are surrendered to shelters every year. 8 million. And so I go and I sit with them and spend time with the ones who may not get a forever home, right? So that's one piece. The second is helping people with the human-animal bond. So that could be anything from a pet funeral to helping people with, how to meditate with your animal. The third is sacred send-offs, and that's really around kind of loss and how we help people through grief around companion animals or animals and systems. I also personally bury a lot of roadkill. That's one of my sacred practices. And then the last thing is advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
So those are really the four things that I'm doing on a daily basis as an animal chaplain.
Great. Okay, so you have a workshop that's coming up that's called Animals, the Planet, and Us. It's about how everything moves together in unison, right? So what inspired you to create this workshop?
Yeah, so, we talk a lot about unity or non-duality or inner beingness and some of these terms, and we often talk to them at kind of a high level. We don't get into the tactical of what that means for each part of, the oneness. And so when I was talking with people a lot around this idea of animals and their place in things, it kind of comes down to three things for me. It's life, loss, and love. And so those are really the structure of the workshop is around those three areas.
Life, loss, and love. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I can. At a really micro level, there's the pets and the companion animals we have in our homes, right? And how we deal with their lives and what happens when they're sick or what happens when they pass on. How do we deal with that? And then when we expand out, there's this idea of planetary ethics. And, there's some terms that we use when we talk about this academically about human exceptionalism and about speciesism, right? And it's something that we're not always looking at, kind of our bias about where we place animals in different parts of what we do on a daily basis. So that's part of what we'll be digging in the workshop.
Okay, so you have a full day workshop. Take us through just a little bit. Just give us a snippet about what the day is going to look like for participants.
Sure. The morning is about looking at our relationship with animals and looking at the spiritual traditions and what they say about animals. I often get people that say to me, I love indigenous traditions because they, love animals, they love nature, it's interconnected. And what I realized when I started studying in animal chaplaincy and theoethics, animality, queer eco-spirituality, all these things we're looking at these days, that there's a really wide, deep knowledge of animals and of nature and the planet across all the traditions, right? We just don't always hear about it. So we're going to unearth, so to speak, pun intended, some of that. We're going to do a little interspecies spiritual practices, which is going to be a lot of fun. How can we get that human-animal bond increased a little bit? I think, one of the things I love about this workshop is it's one where your pets are absolutely encouraged to come with you and they don't cost extra.
That's great.
And then we'll also talk about what are the cutting edge things that are happening in these areas of theoethics and animality. And then the afternoon is an exciting panel and kind of exploratory session of people who are working with animals. So we have pet cemetery professionals, green pet burial, meditation teachers, Ayurvedic wellness teacher, Reiki practitioner, shamanic animal spirit guide. We're going to hear a lot from each one of these different people so that whoever's taking the workshop can figure out what is your call with animals, whether it's just improving the relationship with the pets in your house, or whether it's including them in your ministry, your volunteering as a hobby, whatever it is. You can leave the workshop with what's mine to do.
That was going to be my final question. So aside from the objectives of what they'll get out of it, what would you love for them to walk away with in terms of their spirit and their energy?
I think there's two things. I think it's awareness and action. And so I think one of the downsides when we go through comparative religion and we look at it, from a people perspective, is we're missing a whole piece of this, right? So the one thing I want people to walk away is the awareness of all the really great stuff that's out there, leaving with tons of resources to use and things that you didn't know exist. And then the second thing is action, right? How do you take this? And, when we talk about animals and the planet and our current situation and what's going on, we need a little courage. It can be a little hopeless sometimes in some of the areas that animals are suffering, right? So we can band together in that exploratory and courageously figure out, where our spiritual values and animal welfare and love meet.